everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of the North Star Podcast. Today we have AshleyBPainting. So for Ashley's journey here, she paints, she does awesome things. As you can see, there's a painting behind me. This is what she's done. I'm going to now hand it over to Ashley, and I'm just going to have her, introduce herself and talk a little bit about her story on how she became a painter and why she did the things she has started to do. So Ashley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. So like Jeremy said, I'm a painter in Mission, and I painted this up here. I started painting seriously this year, I guess. I've always been into art and design and done creative things my whole life, but I never really started seriously painting until this year and started kind of putting my stuff out there. And
why did you get into painting? Like, what started your journey of doing it? Because I know you've been doing it for a while. Why? What really got you going on it?
So I first really started painting maybe 6 years ago, like 2018, and just for fun, just nothing serious. And then I got pregnant, and the pandemic happened, and then it just kind of went on the back burner. And then this year, I started taking it a bit more seriously because you encouraged me to. You asked me about, what my dream job would be if I could have any job. And I told you I wanted to be a painter. And you said, well, go paint. So I started painting more and started putting my stuff out there, started an Instagram account, and people were pretty receptive to it. So I've done some shows and doing more shows and started selling some pieces. So
how has that transition been for you?
In terms of painting more?
Yeah, and just selling something for the first time, and
the first time I sold something was really exciting. I was like, whoa, somebody wants to pay money for something that I made. It was really exciting. It's still exciting every time somebody buys something, even if it's a print that I've done. It's exciting when somebody wants to pay money for your work and have it hanging in their house. So
was that a weird though transition, having not doing it at all to then having people wanting your stuff and wanting it in their house, and has that kind of changed your perception on things of how you go about doing your business?
Well, it's definitely given me more confidence in my work, because I think whenever you make something, especially when you make things that aren't necessarily out there for everybody to see yet, like when I started a long time ago, I wasn't really showing people what I was doing. I just was doing it for fun. So when you put something out there, something creative that you've made, it's kind of scary because you don't know what people will think. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter what people think as long as you enjoy the process of it. But for me, the point of it is to pursue it as a business. So it has changed a lot, my mindset around it, because I have to think about things like posting all the time. And that at first I kind of resented it because I didn't want to create content for Instagram. That's not what I set out to do, but I think I've realized that that's part of it. It's part of having a business now. You have to put yourself out there. You have to create content. So that's been a big shift in terms of getting artwork out there. And there is a big market online for selling, but you just have to reach the right people.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned doing shows and art shows and stuff. What was your first art show that you did, and how was that feeling for you when you were there?
I did a show here locally in Mission. They do an event every year called the Sip and Stroll. So basically it's all through downtown Mission, and a lot of local businesses participate, and they invite artists and musicians to come and show their work. And so I was down at Hubco, the brewery, and I had a big display down there. It's really nerve-wracking when it's different in person. Like when you're posting something online, you're not necessarily seeing how people react. People obviously will comment and send you messages and tell you, but in person, it's totally different because you're seeing the looks on their faces when they look at your work and they want you to talk about your work. And that is something that I'm still getting comfortable with, is like actually talking about my work, because I don't have an art background. So I sometimes feel like I don't always belong in the industry because I don't have any training. I've just kind of like taught myself how to do it. Mm-hmm. So when people ask me technical questions, I don't always know how to answer them. But it was a cool feeling, like selling a couple pieces and seeing how excited people are to take your stuff home.
Yeah, I think going off that, it's like, I think knowing all the answers to everyone's questions is kind of like, it's hard to, right? It's I think a lot of people see value in you saying like, I just don't know your question, or I don't understand it, or because like then that just shows that you're not just trying to like kind of just give them an answer to give them an answer. So I think that is also sounds like you're just trying to navigate it too, which is something that just takes a time when it comes to anything new. With the art event and things that you were doing, what was like your fear going into it? Was it more like people are not going to like my stuff, or like do you have those feelings and stuff when you're going into those things, and how do you deal with it?
Definitely, it's scary, because it's your creation that you've made and you're proud of it and you want other people to like it. And my goal going into any show is sell one piece and then I'm good. If I can sell one piece, then I'm happy with that. One person likes my art and is going to take it home and hang it up. I'm cool with that. Yeah, it's definitely scary because you don't know what people will say, and especially when you're in a show where there's a lot of other artists, it can be really intimidating too, because some have more experience than others. Some, if they do similar work to what you do, there's a lot of comparison and things like that. But I'm getting over that. The more shows I do, the more comfortable I'm getting. So
do you have I know you had mentioned like you kind of have a style of what you do and stuff. Like, did this just come to you? Did you just kind of like create this? Is it something that you've seen in the past? Like how the kind of style that you tend to like to do currently?
My style has always been, I've always loved color, like bright colors. I'm always drawn to. I've always been drawn to. I think that people are scared of color a lot of times, and you go into people's homes and it's very beige, and it's just that's not my style personally. And I think color makes people happy, and I think you should bring things into your home that make you happy. So I've always done bright color. I haven't always done the similar style. I just kind of started doing like the more landscape paintings this year. I used to do a lot of abstract and a lot of I guess you'd call it like mixed media. So it would be like collaging and doing different paint on top and things like that. I did watercolors for a while. So I think it takes a while to kind of find your style. A lot of people have asked me that question, like, how did you kind of, because if you look at my paintings, they do look similar. There is a distinct style to them. It didn't just happen. It's a lot of, like, I have sketchbooks full of drawings and paintings. And I think that's the thing with artists too, that you don't always see is I don't show my sketchbooks of the things that I'm not super necessarily proud of. It's all a work in progress, right? It teaches you something when you're sitting down and you're kind of like working your way through it. But I think that's true of anything really on social media, is people aren't really showing their failures. They're showing the things that they're proud of online.
Do you, when it comes down to your current paintings that you do now and that you're going to start making more and more, do you find that this style is going to be something that like you enjoy the most, or has this been something that you're still trying to transition and understand kind of like what your niche is?
I think I figured that part out. I think that people have been really receptive to the style that I'm painting in now. and I enjoy it. And I think that those two things have to kind of go together, because obviously if you want to do it as a business, you need to be able to sell product. And so I think there's a fine line between painting something that you think will sell and that people want from you, but also staying true to your own style and enjoying it. Because if I'm making a painting for somebody, say somebody requests something of me, which has actually recently happened, and they requested something that I don't really do, but I'm trying to get my work out there. So I said yes when I should have said no. And I hated every single step of it. And I finished it. It was done, but it wasn't really a piece that I was super proud of. It wasn't something that I would want to show off necessarily. The client that bought it was really happy with it, but I regret it because I wasn't really true to my style necessarily. So I think it's learning those things and learning that it's okay to say no when somebody requests something of you if it's not what you do. And that was a big lesson for me. And I do know a lot of other people that create things and sell things and have their own businesses. And I recently reached out to a couple friends that have their own businesses, and they just said, you know, what I would say next time is, that's not really my style, what I do, but maybe I know of another artist that could do something for you. And I think it's like that too with like what you do probably. And if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit, but maybe you could recommend somebody else that would be a good fit.
Well, and when there's money on the line, it's really hard to say no, especially if you're starting out.
Yes.
Because it's something that it's like, if it's going to be your living and you that painting's going to pay a bill, but deep down. But I think long term, saying no and things like that are actually make you a better business owner as well, because then you can decipher like, okay, I know this is my niche. But sometimes too, saying yes to things and like seeing if that's what you could do too. Like, I don't think you saying yes is a bad thing. I think it's just more of like, okay, now you know for next time if that's something that you get asked to do again, you'll like know that, oh, okay, you know, this wasn't my favorite thing to do. So I don't think there's a issue with saying yes to things that you're not usually used to doing, because if you say yes and it ends up being something that you actually enjoy and that you actually like to do, like that could have been an opportunity that you missed if you said no.
That's true. I mean, recently I had someone reach out to me on Instagram and he said, oh, I love your work, and do you think you could do a custom piece for me? And I said, well, what did you have in mind? And he said, I really like your work, but I don't like color. And that's, to me though, that's kind of a signature for me, is bright colors. So I asked him what he had in mind. He wanted a landscape, but he wanted it all white. And I just said, it's not really what I do. So I did say no to that. But you're right. I think maybe saying yes to things that maybe you're not necessarily comfortable with, and also figuring out why you're drawn to saying no. Are you saying no because you're scared to take on something new? Is it too challenging? You want to stay with things that are easy? But in that situation, I did say no, because I don't paint all white paintings. That's just not my style. But
have you ever done it though?
No, I haven't. I don't even know how I would approach that. And maybe that's why I said no. Maybe I just didn't feel like taking on the challenge.
Well, maybe if you ever have the opportunity, or that same person reaches out, maybe you take the opportunity just to see.
Yeah, maybe.
Right? You could always do it too, where like you could just charge them less if you don't feel as confident doing it too, right? I think that's a misconception too, is where like just because you have a price set for one thing doesn't mean you have to always keep that price set for other things. Like if it's a new project, if you've never done anything before, it's like, okay, well, if I just being honest, like, hey, I've never done a white, so I'll give you a 25% whatever discount on this, just so then that way at least you like try it and then you can make something. But and then you know, like, this is not actually what's for me. Maybe you really enjoyed the project. And
yeah, that's true.
So yeah, but I think it, like, overall it's good that you are starting to understand though what you like and don't like about it, because I think, you know, it's easy to try to do as much avenues as you want, but you know, it kind of gets to a point where you have to slowly understand your niche as well. So
Yeah, I think that a big learning curve for me is definitely the business side of painting. And it is a business. And like one of my coworkers, actually her daughter, she has a young daughter, and she said, "Oh, my daughter was looking at your work and she wants to be an artist," which is super flattering, obviously, if someone looks at your work and they want to do what you do. And she said, "Do you think she should go to art school?" And I said, "No, I think she should go to business school." Because I mean, I've never been to art school, so I can't really say, but I've developed my style without going to school. But I think that there's probably a lot of things that you could learn from taking some business classes and things like that. It's hard to navigate that side. That side is hard for me to navigate, and setting prices and negotiating different things and figuring out how much your time is worth and all of that, especially starting out. I think it's a lot different when you're established to obviously set higher prices and things like that.
Well, you can even do like the word I'm looking for is internships as well, because like, you know, you could go to, and I'm not bashing your idea of going to school. I'm just saying like you can go to school and learn business, but then to apply that and to actually understand how to apply that is two different things. You know, I can do research all day on business and be like, oh, this is how you run a business, but then it's like until you actually have to do it. So I think it'd be even cool, like if you, I'm not saying this is what you have to do, but I just thought of an idea. Like you had, let's say you had this girl working under you, and then she makes things, and then you can sell those at a portion, and then you guys can like figure out and do as like a team. So if she liked your style, you teach her how to do that style, and then you can sell, she can make money like by selling, but then you get a portion of it because it's your clientele base. Like there's like different avenues there. So that's like a scalability thing you can do. So
I think she's like 8. But
that's fine. You can still sell things at 8.
That's true.
Okay. Do you mean like the youngest?
I have collabs with my son. He's only 4.
Yeah, there you go. So I think it's like stuff like that though. Like, you know, at the end of the day, I think there's different avenues you can take. And what I say is just my experience of how I learned. I never went to business school personally, but I just was at a place where I learned how to run a business from someone that ran a business. Yeah. Right?
Like having a mentor. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like, you know, different avenues for different people and seeing different sides of it and sees what works best for you. Because there's probably people out there that are successful business owners that went to business school, and there's probably some that are not.
Well, there's definitely something to be said for learning on the job and not necessarily learning everything from going to school. Yeah.
But no, it's cool that you have like people that are looking at your stuff and wanting to, you know, maybe pursue it themselves, or you can be an inspiration to other people, right? So based off of those things though, and kind of moving forward, like what do you really want to accomplish with painting? I know you said you want to kind of make it like, you know, your full-time thing. You want to do it and you want to be able to pursue it and things like that. But, you know, like what are the next steps? Like what are you trying to do to get your name out there?
Really, it's a lot of applying for shows. That helps because you can target, depending on the shows you do, you can target specific like art collectors and different things like that. Really getting your work in the hands of somebody who has money and likes to collect art is huge. But I like art to be accessible for everybody. So I try to create pieces that are different sizes, different price points, things like that. So getting out in art shows is huge, but also the social media aspect. There's an art show that I'm doing right now coming up in November, and they actually have a social media coordinator for the show. And we had an orientation with her about promoting the show and different things like that. And this is her full-time job. This is what she does. She has tons of followers, and she basically said that nowadays art is sold on social media. So navigating all of that and I took a really long pause from social media for like 2 years where I wasn't on anything. And then I slowly started having to kind of relearn how everything works. Like, I don't really know, like, I'm not really on Facebook a ton. I'm on Instagram a lot, but that's been a big part of trying to get my work out there is on social media. So I feel like I'm on there all the time, which is maybe a problem, but that's okay.
It depends on what you're doing, though.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's productive ways to use social media, and I think like that's something that everyone tries to navigate. It's easy to just scroll and do whatever and do, like, just scroll endlessly and look at nonsense. But then there's also value in being able to show yourself and help people and reach more people that you would never be able to reach in person because they don't live either in your geographic area or not in your own city, or they've never heard of you before, but like using social media. So I think those things in itself will really help. You had mentioned another show though that you're doing. When is this show and what does it look like?
That one is in November. So it's a really cool concept. It's called the Under $100 Art Show. So every piece, there's 100 artists that are participating, and every piece is $100 or less. So, and they really encourage original pieces. So there probably will be some prints, which are usually more affordable. So if you don't know what a print is, it's basically you take a photo or a scan of an original piece of art, and then you have a print made, and then you can sell it for usually a lot more affordable cost than an original painting. So there won't be a lot of prints there. It's encouraged that we bring original pieces, and so there's going to be 100 artists selling their work. So it's really cool. They've been doing it in Calgary for, I think, 16 years. This is the first year that they're bringing the show to Vancouver. So it'll be, I think it's in East Van, and it's the weekend of November 15th to 17th. So I'm hoping to have like 50 pieces at the show. So that I'm working my way through making all those pieces right now.
And are they all sold for 100?
No, but that's the max that they'll go for. So that's challenging too, because $100 isn't necessarily gonna buy you a big piece. But I'm trying to create a few larger pieces to make my work more accessible to people. And I think part of the show and part of why it's so cool, it's really just to get people kind of exposed to your work. So maybe you're selling something that's been sitting around for a while and hasn't sold, and you're kind of just you're wanting to get it out there for a cheaper price. So
do you like what's the range between your pieces? Like, what's the most expensive piece you've made, and then what's like some pieces that you send that I guess that are quote unquote cheaper? Like, what does a scan go for, and what does like a really large piece custom build go for?
So a larger piece right now, I have 2 large pieces in some shops, and they're both listed at $1,200, and so they're probably similar to this one up here. And a smaller piece, like for an original, the cheapest I've ever done is probably about $50 for a small piece, but that's like a small, like a 6x6. And then prints, they vary depending on the size, but $30 to $40 usually for a print.
So like a big one, like the $1,200 one, like what size, and like how long does it usually take you to do those things? Like what is the...
That's a good question. So usually the size would be about like, I'd say 2 feet by, like a foot by 2 feet kind of thing. Yep. Time, it really depends. I don't really keep track of how long it takes me to paint something, and I usually will just start, and then
when it's done,
it takes me as long as it takes me. But that's one of the things too with pricing your art is you have to figure out, are you pricing it by size? Are you pricing it by how long it takes? Are you pricing it by materials? You kind of have to put all those elements into play. But some of the pieces that I've done, if I price them based on how long they took me, I'd have to charge a lot more money than I'm charging. But I think that for me, it's all a process, and I'm learning as I go too. Like, I don't ever know how a painting's going to turn out when I start. And I usually change it 3, 4, 5 times before it's done.
Do you take, like, you have to obviously put in your costs and stuff for your like paint and then your canvases and stuff like that too when making your price?
Yeah.
Do you is that something like based off of your, like, how do you do that process? Do you like go get one? Do you get multiple at one? Do you, like, is it cheap? I don't even know anything about this stuff. So, like, is it cheaper to get 10 at a time, or is it doesn't matter?
Yeah. So I keep an eye on sales. So if canvases go on sale, like, there's a couple art shops that I'll go to, but even at like Michael's, if they have a sale on canvases, which they do a couple times a year, they'll go on like 60% off. So that's when I would stock up on canvases. I also started painting on different objects. So, like, I did some crib boards recently. I painted on records. The records have been really, really popular. And that is cool because I can keep the cost of the piece down a bit, because I can literally get a record at a thrift store for $1 and do a painting on it. So I can keep the price lower for people, which is great because I want people to have cool art in their house, and not everybody can spend $1,000 on a painting.
Yeah.
I can't usually. So I try to keep it accessible for people if I can. And then a lot of the times the larger pieces are commissioned pieces. So pieces that people are requesting from me, and then the price is set ahead of time. So they know what they're going to be paying ahead of time, and they know what the size is. And a lot of times they're requesting a certain size. So I'll say, okay, well, this is what I charge for that size. But yeah, painting on different objects has been really cool because I can keep the cost down, and it's something different that you don't always see. It's not just on a canvas. So I've been doing more of that lately too.
Does the art show require it to be on a canvas?
Nope.
Oh, interesting.
Nope. It can be on anything.
So you can kind of do whatever.
Yep.
Are you doing mostly paintings like the one behind us, or are you do like all different kinds?
Mostly they're going to be landscape paintings, like the one here. Different styles, different colors. Because also when you apply for a show, you have to submit your work. 'Cause they don't just let anybody into all the shows. So there's 100 artists, and there's an application process, and they accept you based on the style of work that you're applying with. So they want you to kind of stick to that style because they're taking on all these other artists. So they don't want to take on like 30 artists that do the same thing. They want to have variety in the show. So I will be sticking to mainly the landscapes and the bright colors and stuff.
Okay. And then, okay, so based off all this now, like, is there, anything that if you were to have anyone that that wants to start, I know you said like go to maybe do some business stuff or stuff like that, like, is there any words that you would have for someone that's kind of aspiring to be an artist, or any advice or anything like that that you weren't told about starting?
I would say the number one thing is to just create as much work as you can, because it's a practice. Art is a practice. And if you're not practicing it, you're not going to get better at it. And like I was saying before, there's so much of my stuff that I don't show to people because it's either not finished or I don't like it, but it's taught me a lesson or taught me like a technique that, oh, I like this, I'm going to apply it to a larger piece. But try to create every day if you can, even if you're just like sketching or just writing down ideas, things like that, because the more that you create, the more you want to make things, I find personally. So when I actually started painting again, it was almost like I was addicted to it. I couldn't stop because you just get so many ideas and they just keep coming and coming. So I would just say just keep making stuff, and then you'll get better, and then you'll find your style too. And I think that so many artists, that's how you know their work. They have a specific style that's recognizable, and that's how you find it, is just by making stuff.
That's cool. I think that's like really good for someone to understand, because I think a lot of times people get too scared of the like just starting, like just getting going and just starting and you know, just applying themselves and getting themselves out there and just showing their work, because like you said before, like you never know kind of who likes it or who doesn't or whatever, right? So okay, I'm gonna shift now because I know that we've talked a lot about painting, so
Okay.
is there anything else that you wanted to add on about painting? Anything that you want to say?
No, just if you like to make stuff, just make stuff. And it doesn't have to be a business. It can just be for fun. Like, I've always made stuff my whole life. And this is the first time like I've seriously pursued it as a business, but you don't have to make it a business. It can just be for fun. Like it can be a hobby. It can just be something that you enjoy to de-stress or turn your brain off for a little while. Like, that's fine. If you love to do something, you should just do it. So
cool. I like it.
Okay.
Let's transition a little bit. So
okay.
I know that for anyone that doesn't know, me and Ashley have worked together for a long time with fitness, and I just want you to talk about your experience on why you started fitness and why you wanted to pursue a healthier lifestyle and the changes that you've been able to make, because I think this will be really cool for you to talk about from your side of it, because as a coach, it's really, you know, if I'm explaining someone's story to someone, it's not that it doesn't have as much meaning behind it, but when the individual themselves explains it and expresses their feelings, it's really important for us to understand like what's actually happening in their mind when they're going through it, like what struggles are they going through. So I think it'd be really cool for you to just explain a little bit of that part of your story on why we got started, but why you also got started with your health and stuff too. So.
Okay. Well, it kind of ties into painting, because I don't think I would have started painting again if I hadn't prioritized my health, because I didn't have the energy for it before. I was tired all the time. I would come home after work and I would just like flop down on the couch and put the TV on, and that was my evening basically. So the reason I started I started at the fitness lab taking the group classes, and that's where I met you, was just because I was exhausted. I had a 3-year-old at the time and I was working 9 to 5. I'm still doing that job. And I was so tired and thinking like, he's just getting busier and busier and busier, and I can't keep up with him. And I don't want to miss his life because I'm unhealthy, or I don't want to have problems down the road. Like, I was about to turn 40. I was 39 when I came, and my birthday was that year. And I thought, I'm going to be 40. I need to do something with my health. So I started doing classes at Fitness Lab, met you, and then we started chatting about nutrition. And that was last spring 2023. And started personal training, and it's honestly like changed my whole life, because I have energy now. I do things now. I am more excited about life. I'm just excited about learning new things, even with painting. Like, I would have never pursued painting online, putting myself out there, if I hadn't taken more control of my health. Because you need to have some confidence to do that. And I didn't have a lot of confidence before. And now I do. So
what was the biggest change that you saw at the beginning of your journey? So if you can just talk about the things, I know you said lack of energy, but what were some of the things that you were noticing? And then what were some of the things that started to change at the beginning of your journey?
So my whole life I've struggled with my weight, and I basically did every diet. Like I did Weight Watchers, I did keto at one point, I did paleo, all these things. And the problem with all these things is I feel like they don't teach you how to really live like a normal life. They just kind of, I found a lot of them really restrictive too. So when I started working with you and you were like, you can eat whatever you want, well, not whatever, but there was no food that was off limits completely. Yeah. Like if I really wanted something, I could have it. But the thing that I discovered was when you start to put the right things in your body and things that actually have nutrients in them, you don't really want all the other stuff. When we started working together, I was full all the time. I wasn't hungry and I didn't really have cravings anymore for junk food because my body was obviously getting what it needed. So that was the first thing I noticed. I didn't really see, and like you didn't encourage me to go on the scale at the beginning. So I really tried to stay off the scale because I think it can mess with your head, especially if that's how you're used to like tracking your progress. In the past, like Weight Watchers, that's how you knew you were successful. As if you lost every week, you would go to a meeting and you would step on a scale in front of a group of people. And that's how you knew if you were successful, as if you lost pounds on the scale. And I think that the program, that was a long time ago that I did that. I think it's evolved a bit from then, but there's other ways to measure how your success is going. So that was the first thing I noticed was I felt full and I could eat so much food. And at first I was scared when you gave me the amounts I was supposed to eat. I thought I'm supposed to lose weight, not like eat more, but I was able to eat more food and also make progress and lose fat. And it was awesome. So
you had mentioned too, like at the beginning, your energy and things like that. I think, that shift for you, like, did you find that other aspects of your life improved as well?
Yes. We already obviously talked like about painting to death, but that was a huge thing for me, was finding something that I was passionate about and being able to pursue. But my family life improved, especially with my son, because I was able to keep up with him and able to like take him to the pool, and I didn't care about walking around in a bathing suit, whereas before I was like, oh God, I don't want to get in the pool with him. And I didn't want to be that mom. Like I wanted to play with him and I wanted to do things with him. Even just going for walks with him. I didn't feel like doing it before. And now we go out and we do stuff all the time and we're active together. And I know that as he grows, he's just going to get more and more active, and he's getting bigger and bigger. And if he wants me to lift him up and carry him around, I need to be strong enough to do that. So
do you feel like you're at that point right now?
Yes, definitely.
And you had mentioned starting back of spring 2023. When did you start noticing the biggest change in your physical, but your mental as well? Was it the first month? Was it 6 months? Was it 8 months?
I'd say probably by like the fall of last year is when I started to like really see a change. Like I'm really glad. I really hated taking those photos every week, the progress photos, but I'm so glad you made me do them, because it's hard when you look at yourself every single day in the mirror to see changes. But now when I look back at the photos from before, there's such a difference. And I think it was last fall, like around probably like Halloween-ish time, I started to really notice how much better I was feeling, and that I was able to wear different clothes again, and like certain things were fitting that didn't fit before, because my weight has always gone up and down. And so I kept certain things and I was able to wear them again. And then Christmas rolled around and my birthday. And it was cool because I could celebrate those things, but it was one day. Like your birthday is a day. It's not a week. It's not a month. So it's not an excuse to just like go crazy and eat whatever you want. So I celebrated my birthday. I had a slice of cake. I had a really good meal. And then I moved on and went back to eating how I was eating before. So that mindset shift was huge for me, because things like birthdays, Christmas, events, traveling, vacation, those things would really throw me off in the past. I'd be on a program and I'd be super perfect on the program, and then I'd go on vacation or something would happen, a special event. And then I would be like, well, I already messed up today, so the weekend's a write-off. Oh, well, now the week's a write-off. Now that's a month. And then that just snowballs, right? So the biggest mindset shift for me was just being able to be like, okay, that was one meal or one day, and then tomorrow's a new day, and then I'm right back on track with everything. I was never able to do that before.
Why do you think it changed this time?
I think because I had support. Like, I could text you and be like, this is how I'm feeling, and then there was somebody there to kind of be accountable to as well. And I also just think I was just finally just ready. So I don't know what exactly it was. I don't know if it was because like turning 40 kind of freaked me out, and I, for the first time, started feeling like I was getting old, and I didn't want to feel old. I wanted to feel young. And I don't know if that's what it was, but I think that having support and having a person to talk to and having the accountability was a big thing, because I didn't have that before. Even doing other programs, you're not really talking to somebody on a regular basis. You're kind of on your own. And I think that having a coach was really helpful. And it's what I needed for success, because I've never been able to be successful for this amount of time before.
We have a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, this is my dog, Lena.
I think the big thing is that you started to understand that if you were to have something like that, it doesn't mean that all your progress that you've made or the things that you've been doing are all ruined. And I think that's one thing I try to drive home with people, is that just because you know, like I said, you have your birthday and you have a piece of cake or this, or like, doesn't mean all the progress you've had throughout that week is gone. But also to understanding that if you do have that, that's okay, and that it's not going to be the end all be all. I think a lot of people, what happens is they do that, they get anxious, they get nervous, and they're like F it, and then they just have everything, and then now your week is like, not that it's ruined. I'm not saying I'm not going to say it's ever ruined, but it's not going to be as optimal as if you were to, you know, make sure that you're able to just have that piece of cake and just move on with it. Like, it's okay to have it. So that's a huge learning thing. I want you to talk also too about your drinking and stuff like that too, because I think that was another big shift for you. There's a few big shifts that you've done. So I want you to talk a little bit about why you decided to stop drinking as well through this process, and what really like changed, and why did you change that mindset of going through that? Okay.
So I've, all through being an adult, I've been like a regular drinker. And it was probably in the fall, like when, you know, we were talking about when I started noticing differences, I really, really cut back on drinking. And I didn't drink for about a month, I think, last fall, which for me, that was a long time to go without alcohol. And I felt really good. I was sleeping so much better when I stopped doing it. I just thought, I want to do it just to see if I can. And I could. And then me and my husband went to Vegas, and it's a pretty hard city to go to. If you're used to drinking, there's alcohol everywhere when you go to Vegas. So I said, you know what? We're on vacation. I'm going to have some drinks.
And this was after 1 month off.
This was after about a month off. And I kind of like knew leading up to the trip, I was like, I'm just not going to drink for a while until we go on this trip. And then when we go, I'll decide. I'll see how I feel. And pretty much we hadn't even gotten on the flight yet. We were at the airport and we were already having drinks. And then I just made the decision, okay, I'm going to drink on this trip. And I didn't feel very good, especially after having gone a while without any alcohol. And I still like got up and went to the gym, I think twice on that trip, which was amazing for me because that's not something I would have done before on vacation, going to the gym. That's not a thing that I used to do. And, but yeah, we definitely were drinking quite a bit. And we went to a football game and we were tailgating. And if anyone that has been tailgating, you know, there's tons and tons of alcohol, lots of beer and stuff. And then we came back. That was in November. And we came back and then I didn't drink again. I went right back to not drinking. I just said, you know, I didn't really feel that great drinking. And then it was my 40th birthday in December and I had some drinks at a bar. And the next day I woke up just feeling like garbage. And I haven't had alcohol since then, since December. And it wasn't worth it to me to feel that way. I also think that when you're drinking regularly, you don't necessarily notice it, but I was way more anxious when I was drinking regularly, and not always while I was drinking, but it would be like 2-3 days later, all of a sudden I would be panicking about something that now I don't even worry about. I can't even think of what I was worried about. Just little things would cause me anxiety that don't anymore. And I just feel so much better. Plus I was eating a lot of junk when I would drink. Like, it's so easy when you've had a couple glasses of wine to grab a bag of chips, and then all of a sudden the bag of chips is gone. And then you wake up the next day, not only do you feel crappy because you're hungover, but then you know, like, oh, and then I ate this and I did this. And to me, if I'm trying to focus on my health, it's just not something that fits right now for me. I'm not saying like I'll never drink again. And I don't really think, I wouldn't classify myself as an alcoholic. Like it's not something that I needed every day. I think it was something that had become like a habit. I would come home, I would sit down after I put my son to bed, and I'd have a couple glasses of wine. It was like my way of unwinding. And it wasn't even because I enjoyed it anymore. It was just because it was a habit, something I was doing every single day pretty much. So now I just don't do it, and I don't really miss it at all. I don't think about it that much. My husband still drinks regularly. It's not like, oh, I can't have alcohol in the house. It's totally fine. I do hang out with people who drink. A lot of my family members still drink. I just don't participate. And it's interesting when you've done it basically your whole life and then all of a sudden you don't, and you don't really offer up an explanation. I haven't really explained or talked about it that much with people. It's just, I just say no thanks and I don't drink, but I don't make a big deal about it or have a big explanation around it. So,
well, I don't really think it. I think anybody's allowed to do it if they don't want to do it, right? You can, up to the individual. And I think that's one thing that is really tough when either you're starting to eat more nutritiously or you're stopping you don't drink or whatever. You decide to get better sleep. It's like, well, you're on a diet or you're doing something, and it's like, well, why can't eating healthy be the norm? Like, why is it not a normal thing to eat nutritious foods? Is because that's not how the society has shifted things, where it's like it's normal to go drink on the weekend, to have pizza on Friday, to do this, to have all these desserts and all these fast foods. It's like it's a norm. So when people start to eat more quote unquote nutritiously, a lot of people think, well, why are you on a diet? Like, what are you trying to diet for? It's like, well, no, I'm just trying to be healthier. I want to be a healthier individual. So I think there's a big misconception there. And I think a lot of times that shift sometimes just needs to be happen for people to understand, like, oh no, this isn't just like a quick fix. This is something like I actually feel a lot better. And I think that's a big thing for you that you had noticed was how you felt, like how you went day to day and you didn't feel, like you said, anxious, and you had more energy and you felt more mental clarity, you had more motivation to go do things. So I think if anyone's listening to this and they're kind of in this boat of like, you know, it just doesn't mean we're saying go stop drinking, never drink again, or go eat super nutritious and that's the answer. But like, if you haven't done that yet and you're stuck in the same rut, maybe trying this could help. Again, this could be somewhere you could start. But I think a lot of times just trying to find something that works best for you at the end of the day is going to be the most important. So
yeah, like I'm not saying, you know, everyone should quit drinking. I think everybody needs to make a choice for what works best for their lifestyle and what they're doing and what they want to accomplish. But I think for me, like I didn't start painting until after I stopped drinking because I would come home, sit down, have a couple glasses of wine. I wasn't getting up off the couch again. But now in the evening, I'll, not every night, but I'll paint for a couple hours or I'll do something else. And I'm accomplishing something. And I think that the more things that you accomplish, the more you're motivated to do things. I think people think that they're going to just wake up one day and feel motivated to do something. But I think the motivation comes with actually achieving stuff and accomplishing things. I think for me, the motivation comes after and it pushes me to keep going and doing more things. So I think that if you're kind of waiting to just be like, I'm motivated, or today is the perfect day, or I have to wait until this day, like there's never going to be a perfect time to start. You just have to do it. Yeah. You know?
You just have to like go and show up, right? And I think that's sometimes just showing up is the biggest thing. Like we've had that where like you come in and sometimes we just go for a walk or we just do whatever, or we just spend half the time stretching. It's like, but that's, I think the biggest thing is if you don't show up, you're just gonna lose that consistency and that habit. And it doesn't mean every time that you show up you have to do what you had planned, because you know, let's say every month you have 1 or 2 workouts that are not what you had quote unquote as optimal. Yeah. You're still showing up and doing something that you weren't going to be doing before, right? It's better than you going home and probably just, you know, like if you're feeling a certain way about whatever, it's like probably better for you to get moving and do things to get like actually out of that rut than just go home and lie down and you know, do nothing, right? Sometimes it's good to obviously relax and do those things, but I think a lot of times we get in that like mindset of like, if we're not going to the gym and killing ourselves in the gym or pushing ourselves, it's like, well, what's the point? But the point is that you're showing up, and that's going to be the
well, and it's still better than doing nothing at all. I think that for me too, I'm really like, or used to be more, really like all or nothing kind of person. So same with nutrition. It's like, well, you don't have to do it 100% of the time, all the time. If you're doing it most of the time, that's great. And same with the gym. Like you're right. We've had workouts if I'm having like not a great day or I'm not feeling well or whatever, but I still show up and I'm still there. And for me, I've learned that I'm not the kind of person that will do it at home. Like we have equipment at home, but I'm not going to do it. I need to actually physically go to a place and be there and do it. And for me, that's what's worked and kept me consistent, is like having a set time in my schedule and I go and I do it. And I have someone that I'm accountable to, because I know if I don't show up, well, there's somebody there that's waiting for me. So for me, that's what's kind of kept me going too.
Yeah. And I think the big thing going off of that is that you know, you had to be the one to want to make the change. You know, I think a lot of people try to get encouraged from a friend or family or whoever, and you know, at the end of the day, you have to really want to do it at the end, because you're going to be at the end of the day, you're going to be the one who has to do it. Like no one can force you to go. There can be people there that can keep you accountable and like things like that. You can create a situation that can lead to more success.
Yeah.
But you're going to still have to show up. You still have to drive there. You still have to be the one to do the exercises. You're still going to have to like do the things, but you can make it easier for yourself by, getting a coach, by getting a membership, by, going with a friend, whatever it is. There's easier ways to make your goals more achievable. So,
yeah, like that's the thing. The biggest thing that made the difference for me was having a coach, because I just needed somebody to push me a little bit. I know that I'm doing the work, but it's like a team effort, because I it's like anything. I wouldn't fix my car myself, because I don't know how to do that. So I think if you don't know how to do something, it's okay to reach out to somebody who does and ask them for help. And it is an investment, but I think it's worth spending money on your health, and it's going to make things so much easier for me in the future too.
Well, and I think a lot of times people think that it's going to take longer, like in the aspect of, like if I tell someone, hey, I'm going to sit down with you today and it's going to take you a year to get where you want to be, they're like, well, that's way too long. I want to be there in 3 months. But I'm like, well, how many years have you spent trying to even get to your goals? And they're like, well, 20 years. I'm like, well, so if I can tell you in a year that you'll not have everything figured out, but you'll probably have 80% figured out if you were to do the things that we implement and that we go through, and you have it done in a year, wouldn't you take that rather than the 20 years that you've been going up and down for whatever, just because now that somebody tells you it's going to take that long?
Yeah.
Right? So.
Well, and think how fast a year goes by anyways. Like it's going to go by anyways. Do you want to spend the year struggling, or do you want to spend it working towards something? That was the hardest thing too at the beginning, was knowing that it was going to be slow, because other programs, other diets, and everything now is like a quick fix, instant gratification for everything. So it's the same with fitness. Everybody wants what they want right away. And I think that that's the biggest change, though, that's going to make it stick for me, is that it took longer, and I'm still working on it, and I'm never going to be done. So, and I think that's something people need to realize. It doesn't end, like reach a goal and then you're like, okay, I'm done now. I don't have to work out anymore. So I think that it taking longer actually helped me stick with it. So.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, the big things for you are just like you said, showing up, doing the things, being able to have accountability, not by someone, but just yourself as well. So I kind of want you to touch a little bit too. Now we've shifted a little bit even more, because we talked about, getting an exercise routine, eating specifically habits. And I think this is also a message I want to tell, is like, we didn't just do this all at once.
No.
Like we did 3 or 4 months of one thing, and then now we're doing 3 more months of something else. And then it was 3 or 4 months of something else. So it's like in increments and it's in phases. So currently right now, you're more now in figuring out what foods digestively do better for you and don't. And I think that's something cool that you should talk about as well, because I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but I also think you've become more aware of it recently than you have before. So
yeah, so recently, I guess in the last couple months, I've noticed that I just wasn't feeling well a lot of the times when I would eat certain foods. And I know that there's lots of foods that you can't have and everything. So you have a lot of experience with it. And we were chatting one day, and I was like, oh, I'm so bloated feeling. And I think when you eat really crappy for a long time, you just get used to feeling that way all the time.
It's your norm.
Yeah, you don't notice that you're feeling bloated. You don't notice that, like, any of that stuff. So you kind of suggested that.
I remember this conversation really well, because I remember figuring it out with you.
Yeah, like
you had said, you were like, I'm using this.
It was a sauce. It was a soy based sauce, and because I tried a meal prep and everything. So
you tried something different.
Yeah, I tried a different sauce, and when I meal prep, I eat like the same lunch every day for the week. And I just was like, like half an hour to an hour after I eat, I just feel so gross, like bloated, super fatigued. And we were working out one day and you were like, well, what are you eating? And we figured out that it was the sauce that was like a soy-based sauce that has gluten in it. And I never thought I had a gluten intolerance before.
Like wheat gluten.
Yeah. And that never really occurred to me. And so I started playing around with cutting it out, reducing it, and then I tested it
again.
And yes, I definitely have a gluten intolerance. And so I think it's been a couple months since I've been avoiding it. It's a couple of times crept back in, and I knew I can tell almost right away, like within like 20 minutes of eating it. And so it's become challenging. Not that I was eating out in restaurants much, but it's become super challenging trying to eat out anywhere, because I feel like restaurants will say things are gluten-free, but maybe not, or they've been cross-contaminated with other things. So that's been interesting. And I feel so much better not having it. And dairy is kind of I'm still figuring that one out. But I think usually when I have dairy, I don't feel super great either.
Yeah.
So
that's very common though for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think you said it really well, is like people get used to that feeling. They just think that that's how they should feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, when they eat a meal and then I actually had, I can't remember how this happened, but I was talking to someone and I was eating a meal and they looked at it and they're like, don't you get like bloated or like full, like really full after a meal? Like, don't you ever get bloated? I'm like, no. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't. Like, I just feel normal. And they're like, well, like I feel bloated every time I eat. And I'm like, they're like, that's not normal. And I'm like, no, that is not normal. That is not like something that should be happening. You should not. And again, don't get me wrong, doesn't mean I never get bloated. There's some times where, maybe if digestively I just didn't digest the foods well or something different, I'll get bloated. But like if you're constantly getting bloated after every single meal and you feel lethargic and you feel tired and that you want to nap after a meal, that's not normal. That's not a normal thing to have to happen. So I think, if that's if that's you, then I would really look at the foods that you're consuming in that meal and start really being aware, when do I feel that and after what kind of foods do I eat? So
yeah, that's been a huge change for me. Like I didn't feel it that way after every meal, but definitely it was that sauce that got me. And then
then you started to understand it.
Yeah, and now I just try to avoid gluten when I can, and it's hard, but you just have to plan even more than before, because you can't really get a lot on the go that's gluten-free. I mean, there's certain places you can go, but I don't find that there's a ton of options. Like you can't just go into a coffee shop and find an option that's gluten-free that's actually going to be filling and give you protein and like things like that. So now I just bring food with me pretty much everywhere I go. And my son is 4, so we're just like deep into birthday parties every single weekend, and every birthday party for kids, basically they eat cheese pizza and
cake
and cake,
dairy, gluten, everything.
Yeah. So I just try to eat before I go, or I bring food in the car with me and try to make sure that I have something, because when you get super, super hungry and you're not prepared, then you're tempted to eat those foods because you need to eat something. And then it's just not worth it in the end, because then you feel horrible for the rest of the day. Me personally, I'm not saying everybody, but I think that you're right. I think it's probably more common than people realize.
Well, it's like the rate of return on it. Like, eating a piece of pizza, going in for maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it's awesome. It feels good. It tastes good. It's amazing. But like what's the repercussion that you have for the next 2 or 3 days? Like that
Yeah.
10 minutes is not worth the 72 hours,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't care at the end of the day. And I think that's the big thing is like, if that's you, and that's, again, I'm not telling you what to do, but just look at, is it worth it for you? And if that's worth it for you, then cool. Like there's some people out there that don't care and they're okay with it. And if that's you, that's cool. And you know, if you're someone who's listening, you're like, you know what, actually every time, right, you're right. Every time I have dairy or every time I have wheat or whatever, every time this certain food and I feel horrible, and well, I would just start to try to like slowly eliminate it out and start to like really make sure that you're being aware of the foods and things that you're consuming on a daily basis. Because if you don't, then what's going to tend to happen is you're just going to get worse and worse side effects from it. And, you know, I think that would be the one time where I really tell someone, like, I don't think you should eat this food. Right? I'm not someone who's like really, you know, going to be like, you can't have this, is bad, this is like horrible for you. But I will say, if something is digestively making you upset and it's constantly making you upset, not just one time could be like a one-off where like you just digestively that day things were not going well, maybe you're fighting something off, whatever. But if it's constantly causing you distress and it's making your life worse by making you more tired, by making you perform less in the gym, by making you have less mental clarity, like those are things that needs to be found and needs to be understood quickly, so that you're not always totally getting into that routine of being able to really understand, like, I have to make sure that I know what these foods are so that I don't have these negative side effects as I go through my day. So, yeah, I think it's good to understand those things too. So
I think now that I know what feeling good feels like, I don't want to feel that way anymore.
Well, yeah, can like imagine now going back to what you were feeling, like how you felt before and walking around like that versus now.
Yeah, I don't know how I did it for so long. I don't know how people do that.
Well, and then you look at you're like, how did I do that?
Yeah, like how did I get through life feeling that way every single day?
Yeah.
You know, and there's still things I struggle with. Like my sleep has improved a lot, but I have periods of time where my sleep is not great. Right now happens to be one of those times. I'm just having a hard time with sleep. But it's okay because the other aspects of my life are better, so I am able to manage it better. If I was having a hard time sleeping and my nutrition was off and I was drinking alcohol and I wasn't working out, I think that I would just be like laying on the couch all the time, you know? So like my husband knows when I'm really, really tired when I take a nap, because I don't nap anymore. I used to more, but I don't now because I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but there's things I want to do, you know, like that hour, I could be using that hour to accomplish something. So
yeah, I feel like napping is so like not controversial, but I think if you need to nap, sometimes it's because you're actually not getting high quality sleep throughout the day. Not saying that napping, that is the reason why. You can be very healthy, you can sleep very well and still nap, but I think a lot of times people end up taking naps is because they don't get adequate or they don't get quality sleep, and their diet and their lifestyle creates them to have to take more naps because they just don't have the energy to go through their day. So I think that's just something to be aware for people. It doesn't mean that that's going to be your case, but if you're hearing a lot of these things that are said and this is somewhere that you stand or that you're in this category, it could mean that that's the reason why, because of your lifestyle, because of the things that you tend to consume, or if you don't do a lot of activity, those are things that you can start to see more, you could say, symptoms of not doing it. So yeah. Okay, Ashley, so we're going to kind of slowly start to end this podcast, but based off of your lifestyle, your nutrition, your fitness, your painting, your business, like, what do you see now yourself moving forward, and how do you feel like this lifestyle has complemented now the life that you want to now pursue?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is that I've realized the kind of life that I want to live. Like, I feel like before it was just kind of going through the motions, and I would go to work and I'd come home and it was all like a means to an end. You know, like I have to work to make money. Obviously, everybody needs to provide things for their family and for themselves. But now I'm trying to pursue something obviously that hopefully will provide an income, but it's something that I really enjoy doing. And I obviously want to keep doing that. I think it would be really cool down the road one day to open up some type of working gallery, which would basically be having artists come in. It's a workspace for them, but it's also a space for them to sell their work. That's something that in the future I think would be something I would want to do. In terms of my health journey, I plan to just continue doing what I'm doing. The nutrition aspect, I think, is going really well for me. I've learned a lot, but I'm still learning different things. Like this whole gluten thing didn't come up until a couple of months ago. So I think that there's always going to be adjustments and tweaks and things like that. So just continuing to work on that. I'm going to continue going and working out because it makes me feel really good and it helps me accomplish the things I want to accomplish. It gives me the energy to do. It sounds weird to say that going and working out gives you energy, but it really does. So I'm just going to continue on with that.
Well, I think when you have the right intensity, but you also have the right nutrition, it complements your energy. Where I think a lot of and this is another thing that I tend to see where people tend to undereat and overtrain. And then that also causes a great disaster because now what you're doing is you're pushing your body to a point of like past its limits and you're now not feeding it adequate nutrients. So that's also a recipe for disaster as well. I'm not trying to scare you by saying this, but if you're someone who's in this boat where you're like always working out and you're under eating and you're not eating a ton of calories and you feel like you're never able to make progress and you're like, well, I eat healthy and I go work out. It's like, well, maybe look at how intensely are you working out and what's your nutrition look like? Because if you're someone who's in this camp where you tend to always be under eating and overtraining, it's really hard for your body to ever adapt and recover and make sure that you can actually see different results because you're always in a state of stress because under eating for too long is very stressful and overtraining for too long is also very stressful. So now you're doing two things that are going to cause more stress. And if you're not getting good enough sleep, well, that's just even.
Well, and I think the types of workouts that you're doing too, like before I started working with you, I had tons of different gym memberships and stuff, and all I would do is do cardio, like all cardio. I'd go to the gym, like in my early 20s, I would go to the gym and do 2 hours of cardio, and that's what I would do. And then I would go home and I would eat like a plain chicken breast and broccoli. So it's exactly what you're saying, like not eating enough and like overtraining, but maybe not doing the right types of workouts either.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's cool to like be able to see not see the things that you did quote unquote wrong,
well,
but where they
weren't effective.
Yeah, that you weren't doing as effective, and now looking like, oh, now it makes sense why I wasn't able to hit my goals, or oh wow, now it makes sense why it was so much harder or why I felt so much shittier is because this is what I've been doing for so long, and now I'm understanding how to reverse it and be able to like actually see the differences and make the changes. So,
and not saying cardio is bad, like you need some cardio, but that's not really what we do most of the time.
No, that's not the foundation of what we do. So.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to touch on those things. I think this is a good place to end it.
Okay.
So, Ashley, where can people find you on Instagram? And then just give some details about your show if they want to come see your paintings or they want to reach out. So usually I just say like Instagram or your email or the art show. So
okay. Well, I'm on Instagram, AshleyBPainting. So AshleyBPainting. AshleyBPainting on Instagram, and also Gmail. So AshleyBPainting@gmail.com if you wanted to email me. I have 2 shows coming up, actually. One September 21st, and that's going to be in Fort Langley. That one's more of a market, but I will have some original pieces there, as well as lots of prints for sale. So that one, September 21st in Fort Langley, and then the under $100 art show is the one we talked about. That one's in November in East Van, and it's November 15th through to the 17th. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'm always posting updates about all the different shows that I'm doing and stuff like that, and new pieces that I'm making.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ashley.
Thanks for having me.
We will end it off here, everyone. Thank you for listening or watching episode 22 of the North Star podcast with Ashley. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you so much.